the Newstrack, we will get you the inside details of the operation mounted by the Indian Army to evict the Chinese who tried to transgress across the line of actual control on the south bank of the Pangong Lake. But what I want to do first is take you through the official statements that have been put out by the Indian Army, which early this morning accepted that there was an operation that was mounted, even though details are very sketchy. Towards the evening, a massive pushback from the Chinese army, the Tibetan Theatre Command putting out a statement accusing India of having crossed the LAC, saying Chinese sovereignty has been violated by the Indian army and threatening retaliation. This is by far the biggest story of the day. Here it is.
Don't be fooled by the silence from Ladakh over the last few weeks. The Chinese have been on the move, except this time they have been caught in their tracks. The line of actual control is on the boil again. The Chinese army has provoked again, and tensions have spiked. On Saturday night, about 200 Chinese soldiers once again tried to make a fresh intrusion bid on the southern banks of the Pangong Lake. The vehicle convoy, comprising SUVs, made a dash in an attempt to occupy fresh territory. But this time, the Indian Army was lying in wait. Late last week, the Indian Army had foreseen the Chinese action and deployed in advance as a preemptive move, something the Chinese had not expected. When challenged PLA convoy stopped, there was major jostling. But with the Indian Army unit stood its ground, determined not to concede even an inch, the PLA troops were forced to retreat. There were no injuries or casualties of any kind.
The southern bank of Pangong Lake had been calm since the standoff started in early May, nearly 4 months back. It is clear that China wanted to make forays into a new area and open a new front. But the Indian Army, due to its enhanced surveillance, was able to detect the Chinese movement very early on and launched a preemptive action, making sure the Chinese do not advance forward.
Make no mistake, ever since Galwan Valley clash on 15th of June, the Indian Army has been on full operational alert to thwart any Chinese misadventure.
They have to go back to status quo ante if they really want peace. The problem is they don't want peace. How long can we go in for a one-sided peace? In my very humble opinion, I think the time has come to call China's bluff, to make it pay a cost and suffer consequences for needlessly aggressive behavior.
After multiple rounds of talks, which has resulted in minor troop pullback, the fresh attempt by China has shown no intent of meeting its commitments. With Chinese troops holding on the flashpoints and significant military build-up by China in the depth areas, the writing on the wall is clear. It's going to be a harsh winter, with little hope of the ice melting anytime soon. With Abhishek Bhalla, Bureau Report, India Today.
We want to get you the inside story of what happened on the 29th and 30th of August on the south bank of the Pangong Lake. I also want to give you some locational context of where the action unfolded. So this is the Pangong North Bank. It's on the south bank this time that the Chinese tried to intrude onto Indian soil. The Indian Army completely ready for them. Remember, 1/3 of the Pangong Lake is on the Indian side, 2/3 of the Pangong Lake is on the Chinese side. This is the line of actual control. China has come up till finger 4, even though they've pulled back till finger 5, but all of that is on the north bank. What happened on the 29th is that the Chinese tried to come in the dead of the night, past the line of actual control on the Indian side of the south bank of the Pangong Lake. What we're hearing is, in response to this operation, India then mounted a counter-offensive operation where there were Chinese posts. And remember, the Chinese charge of India crossing over onto Chinese side is wrong, because this is the Indian perception of the line of actual control. So we went in, there were Chinese posts there, some of the finest special forces of the Indian military involved, and we pushed the Chinese back. That is the information that we are getting. I want to go across to all the guests who are joining us on this broadcast for their perspective, starting with Jaidev Ranade, one of India's top China hands, understands the ins and outs of what's going on inside China. There's a crucial meeting of chaired by Xi Jinping where he looked at separatism, Spritism in Tibet and how that's impacting China's aggressive maneuvers. We've also got with us on this broadcast Colonel Ajay Shukla, leading strategic affairs expert. I've got Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, former, he's been head of the 14 Corps, he's been DG Infantry. We've got, from a political perspective, representing the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, its spokesperson and Rajya Sabha MP GVL Narasimha Rao. We've got Pawan Khera, national spokesperson of the Congress. Let's just first get an understanding of what's going on. Now, trust Jaidev Ranade's analysis a lot because he really tracks what's happening in the Mandarin press. He tracks what the Chinese think tanks are saying. So, Mr. Ranade, let's start by you setting the context for why China on the 29th of August tried to open a new front on the south bank of the Pangong Lake. So far, the action was concentrated on the north bank. They've now come down south. What do you think they were trying to do? What are you making of China opening this new front at a time when 5 rounds of dialogue have happened between India and China, and the expectation was that China would seek disengagement, and they claimed that they wanted to pull back?
One thing is very clear, Rahul, that what they were doing is stringing us along. They had no intention of pulling back. And in fact, this latest action indicates that very clearly. But this latest action is backed up by a couple of other things. Firstly, the fact that they were on the southern bank, which has been stated in our Ministry of Defense statement also, means that they have tried to take a fresh initiative. Now, obviously, they had a larger agenda in mind when they came to all these points, and I think they're trying to see how best they can push it. Thirdly, the Chinese have made plans for a permanent location and permanent development of the Pangong Lake as an international spot, tourist spot, and they want to develop that. Now, when they have made such plans, obviously, they have an interest in getting all this area with them. Here, I would like to mention also that the Western Theatre Command statements this time are quite tough. In fact, he talks about India having violated the LAC again. And the terms used this time to describe the various locations are Chinese terms, not the usual terms that we all use. Again, the fact that it was planned is apparent from the fact that the aircraft, J-20 aircraft which China has brought in, and which incidentally they, since late last year, reprioritized the J-20s for the Western Theatre Command. Otherwise, the Western Theatre Command was the last of the list. They raised it last year to make it on par with the Eastern Theatre Command. So there is one squadron already deployed in the Western Theatre Command.
Okay. Colonel Ajay Shukla, what's your reading? You have your own sources. You're speaking to people in the Northern Army Command. What can you tell us first about what you think really went down on the 29th and the 30th of August?
Well, the Chinese have at all stages, starting from the time that they entered in the end of May or beginning of June, they have come with the intention of staying and capturing key heights, of redefining the line of actual control in a manner that is tactically suitable to them, in which they occupy all the dominating heights, the heights from which you get observation, the heights that you get fire from, and the action against Helmet Top and Black Top that took place on the 30th morning, early morning, was part of this. They've been stringing us along, as Jaidev quite accurately said, with dialogue and negotiation. But on the ground, their actions have been the actions of somebody who's come to stay and very purposefully redefine the line of actual control to suit them. It's just that this time there was, for the first time that I've seen since this incursion started, there was a retaliatory action from the Indian side. The details of that I would rather not give on television, but it has sent a message to the Chinese. There is a clear understanding now that, the game has changed, so to speak. the Indian sort of subservience and dialogue process and attempting to solve the problem through diplomacy will now be replaced by a certain set of purposeful action from the Indian side. So that's where we stand right now, Rahul, in my estimation.
You know, it's interesting that when India takes a knock, Colonel Shukla, you want to give all those details, and then when India goes and mounts an operation and takes action against Chinese forces, you're saying this is something we shouldn't be discussing at all or talking about. But
in the military, that you give up enemy positions and give out details of your own, endangers your own force. The television anchor you might mind.
Okay, so I'm going to leave that aside, because what's happening very clearly is that the game is changing. The Chinese, for the longest time, thought they could just come in, sit, and India would just go down on its knees and accept China's emergence as a global superpower. India pushing back and pushing back hard. Those are the details that are emerging. Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni is a man who knows a thing or two about special operations. General Kulkarni, can you give viewers your sense of the tactical and strategic situation on the ground, especially in the South Pangong sector? So far, the entire action was concentrated on the north bank of the lake. Now the Chinese coming in the south, and the solid Indian pushback, which we also put out a statement. So we're not just taking military action in an attempt to seize the narrative and the initiative, putting out a statement saying that this happened on the 29th and 30th, even though it doesn't have much operational detail. General Kulkarni.
Rahul, at the very outset, I must tell you, the Chinese always believe in nibble and negotiate. If they believe in nibble and negotiate, in this particular aspect of the South Pangong Tso action that we are talking about, there was adequate input coming in as to Chinese are likely to be doing something on the southern side of the Pangong Tso. Now, holding the northern side is okay. Now there is a fait accompli. It's from finger 8 to finger 4, going back to finger 5. Negotiations are going on, military level talks are going on. You find diplomatic engagements are going on. All of it is a waste. All the treaties are a waste, because the Chinese are just taking us the garden path, and meanwhile they're trying to build up wherever they want to. Again, I repeat, had the Chinese succeeded in establishing a foothold on the southern bank of Pangong Tso, it would have been totally different. It would have been extremely difficult thereafter left to participated. The Indian army could prevent their having a foothold on the southern bank is the preemptive thing. And that is why the Chinese are now screaming away that Indians violated LAC. There was no contact, as I understand. There was no contact. There are no casualties. But it was adequate enough to push the Chinese on the northern bank and keep them on the northern bank. Had they come on the southern bank, let's presume that they had established a foothold on the southern bank, it would have been extremely, extremely difficult. Our situations would have gone really out of control.
Now, General Kulkarni, China using all manner of belligerent language in the statements that have been put out by the Tibet Theatre Command. Is that just, chest beating, or do you believe that the situation is so delicate that things could spiral out of control and it could take an ugly turn from here on?
What happens, Rahul, when the situation is extremely tense, there is no denying the fact. Situation is extremely tense. And when the talks are going on, the negotiations are going on, diplomatic engagements are going on, all of it are violated, and you go in for a total military provocative action, wanting to establish the foothold on the side which is not belonging to you at all. At all. When we talk of Pangong Tso, there's finger 4 to finger 8. There's a water body, what you rightly said. 90 kilometers of it is in the Chinese side. 45 kilometers is on to our side, of which again from finger 8 to finger 4, a distance of approximately 8 kilometers. You can say about that much water body also they wouldn't let us get in. And now you find that they want to establish a foothold on the southern bank of Pangong Tso. If they intend doing that, we should never allow it. The very fact that you saw what Xi Jinping has said recently.
Okay, so let Jaidev Ranade build on that. There was a crucial meeting where Xi Jinping laid out his plans to integrate Tibet, as it were, more with the mainland, and also take on separatism and quell separatism. So how does this, first explain for our viewers who didn't follow what happened, Jaidev Ranade, what the Chinese president said, why this is crucial, coming as it does just 48 hours after China's big internal meeting on Tibet?
The 7th Tibet Work Conference which they have had, and it was presided over by the Premier, and Xi Jinping gave a speech. where he in fact stressed the need to safeguard the borders. And let's not forget that he has already set up a scheme for establishing border defense villages all along the Indo-Tibet border. So he stressed that. He stressed the fact that they have to quell the monks and Tibetan Buddhism and adapt it to socialism with Chinese characteristics. In other words, basically sinicize Tibet. But here I have a couple of other points which I would like to mention in the context of the discussions. Firstly, I maintain that the Chinese, when they came in with a bigger plan, and they had no intentions of trying to resolve the issue at a higher level. Therefore, the absolute silence from the top leadership of the Chinese on this entire episode. Neither Xi Jinping nor the Politburo members have said a word. As I mentioned also, the Western Theatre Command statement was very specific, and they used Chinese words to describe the locations, and their effort was to try and project that India has violated, as they said again, the sovereignty of Chinese. So obviously they're trying to drum up the sentiments of the Chinese people. It is primarily...
No, but can I just tell our viewers, and this is very crucial, and remember, we're not giving away any operational details. We're looking at what the Chinese media are saying through, and they only have state-run media, and that is crucial because in a story that's just appeared on Chinese on a Chinese publication, all of them owing traces back to the government, they're now accusing India of having violated the Anglo-Chinese Convention of 1890 in the Sikkim sector. So forget what you're just hearing about Ladakh. The Chinese are now accusing the Indians of having crossed the line of actual control, coming over to the Chinese side, mounting a counter-incursion in the Sikkim sector of the India-China border. This predictably, as is the case with multiple things in India, has taken a political turn with the opposition attacking the government hitting back. So I just want to show you the exchange between the opposition and the government, and then we'll go across to Pawan Khera and to GVL Narasimha Rao and bring them into this conversation as well.
आए दिन भारत की संप्रभुता पर हमला बोला जा रहा है। आए दिन चीनी दुस्साहस और चीनी घुसपैठ की खबरें सामने आ रही हैं। देश के प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी कहां हैं? उनकी लाल आंख चीन को दिखाकर वो बात कब करेंगे? चीन को करारा जवाब कब देंगे? देश की सरजमीं से चीनी कब्जा कब छुड़वाएंगे?
ये लाल आंखें वर्सेस भीगी हुई गमगीन आंखों का सवाल है। लाल आंख तो हिंदुस्तान के पास है, लाल आंख मोदी जी के पास है, लाल आंख इंडिया की आर्मी दिखाती है। तभी तो आज हिंदुस्तान का जो संप्रभुता है वो अखंड है। मेरा प्रश्न रणदीप सिंह सुरजेवाला और राहुल गांधी जी से है। हमारे पास तो लाल आंख है, आपके पास ये भीगी हुई आंखें क्यों है? जब भी हम किसी के ऊपर हमला कर मतलब सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक करके आतंकवाद के कैंप को खत्म करते हैं, आप रोना धोना शुरू क्यों कर देते हैं?
You know, you've got the Chinese now accusing India of having crossed the LAC in the Sikkim sector as well, referring to a Chinese Anglo treaty of 1890. When the situation is as volatile, Pawan Khera, as it is, and clearly there are military operations taking place, a lot of which can't be spoken of on TV and in the media, is this a good time for the opposition to constantly be attacking the government, or just let the army do its job at this moment and leave politics for a little later in the future? Pawan?
Rahul, we've discussed this particular aspect of this narrative often in the last 2 months on your show also, and I kept reminding your viewers of how Atalji used to protest outside the Parliament Street Thana in the 1962 action in October-November when the action was taking place, how he asked for a special Parliament session and it was agreed to. I also reminded your viewers in 2013, the speeches and the questions of Arun Jaitley ji, Sushma Swaraj ji, Rajnath Singh ji, Ravi Shankar Prasad ji, when UPA 2 was in power and there was a disturbance on the border with China. So I don't think we need to keep revisiting that. I need to start with paying a very rich homage to the former Supreme Commander of our brave armed forces, Pranab Da, and he would have been very upset today watching what's happening on the border as a former defense minister also, and watching how the GDP is today as a former finance minister also. Coming back to China, we are not attacking the government. We are just questioning the government. How does China derive this confidence, Rahul? First, China has a major weakness of our leader. The major weakness being his obsession with having a perception of being strong, whatever the truth may be. Our army, nobody doubts its capability. I mean, this Chushul airstrip, Rahul, you are an expert on military history and also military strategy. What an important airstrip this was, even in the 1962 Rezangla operation, where the 13 Kumaon Regiment, Major Shaitan Singh, this was not a conflict zone since 1962. What has happened today? What has changed today? No, I can also be childish and say, Modi ji, China se mile huए. No, I don't want to go down that road because that's pedestrianizing the debate. Let's stick to the facts. The leader has to understand that diplomatically we have failed. Our foreign policy has come under a huge question mark, and his weaknesses are, they lay bare in front of the
So let GVL Narasimha Rao respond to it, that yours is a government obsessed with perception and narrative, and because this is a narrative that doesn't suit the perception that you'd like to build, the Modi government is accused of having sought to underplay the threat posed by China on the line of actual control. Now it's blowing up, whether it's in Sikkim, whether it's in the South Bank, whether it's in Depsang, just events are overtaking any attempt to try and shape or control the narrative. Respond to that. GVL Narasimha Rao.
No, Rahul, I don't know why the Congress party is upset today. I think when our armed forces, when our army actually rebuffed an attempt by the PLA, when they're designed to really occupy the South Bank has been rebuffed, it's a time, it's a moment to rejoice. It's a moment to salute your army. It's a moment to really applaud your national security plans. But the Congress seems very upset. I think it seems they have their masters in China. The serious questions that have been asked of Congress, they run away from them. Why does the Congress party pursue a policy which suits China? Why does it act as a propagandist of China? What 2008 MOU is all about? Why are they not coming out with it? Why have they taken funds from China and Chinese embassy in Delhi? With any self-respecting political party, take funds from a neighbor,
GVL Narasimha Rao, can you share as the official spokesperson of the government your assessment of the current situation? We leave the Congress on the side for a moment. The Chinese have accused India of crossing over in Tibet. They're accusing us of having mounted an offensive on Chinese soil in the Rezangla area in the South Bank of the Pangong. What's your reading of what's going on inside China and the current military confrontation, GVL?
No, Rahul, I think the government's stand and the intent had been made more than clear, more than once by the Honorable Prime Minister. He said this when he visited Ladakh more than a month ago. He also called out China for its expansionist designs, even when he addressed the nation on the 15th of August. And there is, actually is paying it for actually trying to reach in a very hostile manner with India. There is already a global kind of a coalition effort. There is a global collective effort to really call out China's expansionist designs and policy. So certainly China had come there to stay for a few months and maybe nibble away at the Indian territory. They succeeded when Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister. They ceded more than 600 square kilometers of land then. But this government and the armed forces...
Okay, Pawan Khera, quick response, and then I want to go back to the generals on the show. Yes, Pawan.
They will not let PLA enter our LAC.
GVL has been caught lying on your show several times on the Shyam Saran report.
No, I think this is a fact.
I challenge him. Please don't interrupt. Please don't interrupt, first of all.
No, but you can't say I'm lying. You are lying.
Ask him not to.
Okay. GVL Narasimha Rao, you've just made a bunch of charges. Let Pawan Khera respond. I'll come back to you to counter. One second. No, 1 second. GVL, if both of you speak at... 1 second. Both faders down. GVL, you've just spoken for about 2 minutes. You've leveled a bunch of charges against Pawan Khera and his party. Let him respond, and then I'll give you a chance to counter.
Thank you, Rahul. Shyam Saran, in his report to Dr. Manmohan Singh, then Prime Minister, never, ever, and he's denied it again last month, never, ever mentioned anything to do with 640 square kilometers. So ask him to stop lying on your show, which is an important show. I ask you, GVL, Subramaniam Swamy is in your party, hopefully, as far as 1 hour ago was concerned. He's saying, do something, China is crossing all limits. He is talking, and your own MP from Arunachal Pradesh East is talking about a land-to-air missile base near Mansarovar. Talk about that. Please respond to what's happening in Mansarovar. Everybody wants to know because these are important sites for all of us. These are critical. These are traditionally we have our ties with these sites. Please tell us, what is your MP saying? What is Subramanian Swamy saying? Stop quoting these fake reports to me. Please tell us what.
Okay, GVL, quick counter. I need to focus. You know, my problem has been. Okay, GVL, quick counter.
You see, whatever I stated is in a report which was published. No, can I complete my statement? This is a report in...
Pawan, now let GVL speak, please. Pawan, now let GVL speak.
This is a report in India Today and filed by Shiv Arur, your own colleague Rahul, who's a very well-informed and on defense matters, he certainly speaks with authority. He said this is, he is talking about, he said the shocking revelation. Can I, no, man, you.
Now you're being unfair. Pawan Khera, now you're being unfair. You wanted silence. Pawan Khera, you wanted silence when you were speaking. Now let GVL speak, please.
No, Pawan, I think you were trying to get away by lying. The shocking revelation. This is a report by Shiv Arur. You are Shiv Arur, India Today. You are questioning India Today, not me.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, BJP and Congress, please remember the enemy is on the other side of the line of actual control. This political fight serves no purpose. We have a very volatile, very tense situation.
No, this is India Today. This is India Today. No, Shyam Saran is a liar.
Has been denied by Shyam Saran himself.
Singh also a liar.
No, you are lying again. You keep lying every day. You come and lie.
No, you can't get away shouting Pawan Khera.
Okay, I have to stop this. 1 second. Both faders down. This serves no purpose. Remember, our focus is on what's happening across the line of actual control. We have two armies that are on the verge of war. That needs to be our focus at this moment. I want to show you the build-up that the Chinese have done. Remember, throughout this period, before Galwan and after Galwan, when China has been talking about disengagement, de-escalation, they've actually been bringing in men, material, equipment, forces, fighter aircraft, tanks, armored, to fortify their positions, building new radar centers. We looked at satellite pictures to show how, while they were pretending that they were in dialogue, while they were pretending that they wanted to pull back, China has actually been moving tanks, troops and strengthening its deployment all across the line of actual control. This, to my mind, is the real challenge India faces. This is where we need to focus our energy and come up with a comprehensive national response. Take a look at this.
No trust. No disengagement. No pullback. Full aggression, full hostility, full duplicity. The Chinese once again proved themselves worthy of India's total distrust. China's latest attempt to mount hostile actions on the southern banks of the Pangong Lake come 116 days after the standoff in eastern Ladakh began. Ironically, the fresh attempted aggression by China takes place just a few kilometers from where the standoff was originally triggered, on the north banks of the Pangong Lake on May 5th. That clash escalated into a wider standoff by China at 3 more flashpoints in the Galwan Valley, Hot Springs and Gogra Post. On 6 June, recognizing the warlike mobilization, the two sides held unprecedented Lieutenant General level talks to defuse the situation. But those talks proved futile because just 9 days later, things exploded on June 15 in the Galwan Valley. With a violent clash that killed several troops on both sides, an incident revealed and detailed first on India Today. On June 19, China escalated aggressions by occupying the ridgeline at Pangong Tso's Finger 4 with semi-permanent positions. On June 23rd, India Today reported on satellite images depicting crucial Chinese movements on the southern banks of the Pangong Tso. Just days later, on July 3rd, Prime Minister Modi visited Ladakh. A few days later, the two sides arrived at an agreement to disengage. But even as a token pullback was witnessed in the Galwan Valley and the Hot Springs area, India Today told you how China was continuing to remain deployed in the crucial Pangong area as well as Gogra Post. A tense calm followed, with the Chinese refusing to move back further and India remaining fully mobilized. On August 29, things erupted again, and the Indian army was lying in wait. Late last week, intelligence reports flashed the Chinese army movements across the line of actual control in the Chushul sector near the Pangong Tso lake, a place where the Chinese had been building up force levels since late June. The latest incident saw the Indian army thwart the Chinese aggression with sharp preemptive action. But in doing so, it has also confirmed that China hasn't changed its intent even a little. It remains fully hostile and nothing has changed. For India, this war is a war of sovereignty. Bureau Report, India Today.
And remember, so far questions were being asked about the Indian response. Now finally, from the information that we are getting and also from the charges that the Chinese are leveling, it seems that there has been a strong Indian response to China's provocation and aggression. General Kulkarni, with all the wealth of experience you have at your disposal, where do you think the current confrontation between India and China is going? China clearly not even happy with the current status quo, seeking to change that through their probe in the South Pangong Lake area. Where do you think we are going next? A lot of people who are watching you at this time would wonder, is war inevitable, or at least limited conflict of some nature now highly likely?
Rahul, firstly, China can't be trusted. Secondly, it's a long haul, and you will have more of these kinds happening. We'll have to be extremely alert. When I say long haul, it just could be even 3 more winters coming in for Chinese to do what they want to do. The Chinese have to be given a very, very strong response. If they believe in nibble and negotiate, we must believe in prevent and evict. Until and unless we believe and do that kind of a thing with the Chinese, they will never ever learn a lesson. We have to be tough with them, and the message has been given loud and clear. If they have prevented from establishing a foothold on South Pangong Tso Lake, is indicative that we mean business, and they better stay away from it. If that is conveyed to them, you can be sure there will be no war. Otherwise, we are in for a long, long haul, maybe even 3
Okay, Ajay
winters.
Shukla, what's your sense? Do you believe that this tense status quo shall continue, or do you think we're heading up the escalation ladder and tonight the night's going to be tense and we don't know where things will go? We do know that that brigadier level meeting has just got over. We don't know the details that emerged from it yet. But what's your reading of the current situation?
Well, the current situation is not a happy one for India. The Chinese are in Indian territory. They are in occupation of Indian soil. And to confront them and block them from ingressing further is not sufficient action. India needs to make sure that it recovers its lost territory. As a sovereign nation, it is completely against our wishes, against our deepest instincts to have a foreign country come and occupy our territory. And therefore, we must find a way not just of sort of going into a winter deployment in present positions, but of making sure that we recover our lost positions. It is totally, and I'm convinced of this, within the capability of the Indian military to do so. We have currently, and I'm not going to start naming the special forces, but a division's worth of special forces in these areas. And the operation that was conducted last night is just one such example of what India can do. I don't think it's satisfactory at present.
I was waiting and I was hoping that at the top of the show we'll get you the full inside story on what happened. But because these are operational matters, we're waiting for a clearance from the highest authorities in India's security establishment, that clearance has come through. I now have that report, so what I'll do is I'll slip into a break, then we'll have our defense correspondent join us, who's just been briefed by the topmost authorities in Army headquarters and in charge of national security, and we'll tell you which special forces went in, what was the kind of operation that was mounted, and what is the current state of play. Those exclusive details are coming up on the news track on the other side of a very quick break. Stay with us.